Today's class is on berries, grapes. I kind of expanded it to anything that's not a fruit tree, but you can eat it. That's not a vegetable or herb. So there we go, berries, grapes, brambles, figs, pomegranates, that kind of stuff. And I even got into some obscure things like sand cherries. It's a native that grows wild here. Got gooseberries. Anyone had a gooseberry before? Aren't they good? No, they like melt in your mouth. Oh my gosh, they're so good. Now anyway, that's kind of the topic, how to have edibles that are shrubs. I'm using those kinds of plants in my own yard as landscape features. They're part of the landscape. It looks good. I've been harvesting blackberries and raspberries, both red and black. Grapes are coming on. They're not mature yet, but they're starting. And so how to have some of those things in your own yard. So for me, I'm a bird gardener, so the front part of the yard is for me and the back part of the yard is for birds. And so I'll let some of my plants go just so they can feed on. And it's a hoot. It's like a circus back there. There's so many birds. It's ridiculous because I'm providing habitats for them to roost, to eat, plus I've got some water. I don't feed them seed, I just give them plants and places to hide. And so I'll have some grapes. I've got one grapevine just for them. I've got a blackberry and a raspberry just for them. And then some currants and some other freaky stuff that they love. One that they really love, one of their favorites is this one. This is sand cherries. Now sand cherries, this is a native to the Western Rockies. You'll see this throughout. It's a great plant, super, super tough. Once it gets established, you can let it go on its own. You'll see this as you walk around the Bradshaws and stuff. You'll see this plant just showing up. Gets up about like this big. It's like a bush, not a vine. But it forms a berry on it like this, the real dark colored. It's like a really small cherry. That's what it looks like. They are extremely sweet. You can make jams and jellies. Kind of an old-fashioned plant. I like it because it's just a pretty plant. And then I plant it for my birds. And then if I happen to walk by and eat one or two, which happens often, that's okay too. But sand cherries, you don't hear of very often because it's so old-fashioned. Your grandparents grew this and made jellies and jams, but then we have new introductions and it just gets forgotten. It's sort of like this one. This is a gooseberry. This is an American gooseberry. This is the gooseberry that forms the largest of the berries. It's a great big green berry, very sweet. Has a shrub about like this, so mine gets up about hip high or so, kind of mounded shape. Again, this one I plant, I don't know what to do with gooseberries. I like the taste, just eating off the bush. They're good in salads, but I planted to kind of share with my birds. I just like it because it's so pretty. It's got a kind of like a currant kind of foliage to it. So it naturalizes really well. So it's in my backyard, in my xeriscape kind of yard. I do put it on a drip system because I want the fruit on it. And so it could go all by itself, no care at all. But I find if I want the fruit to really form and be nice, I gotta hydrate it, especially when it's in fruit or in production. So I just keep and I water it once a week right now. That's all this is, okay? That's the two obscure ones that you don't hear about very often that do exceptionally well up here, exceptionally well. They like the high mountains. We should cover watering real quick because it's come up already, we haven't even started. I did bring, I don't think I brought enough. Here's my business card, I'll keep one just so I'll give half of them this way and half of them that way. And if they can go, when it runs out, fine, share amongst yourselves. But on the back of this card, actually has the water guide. This is super important for fruit, anything that fruits. So peaches are coming off, cherries are coming off, blackberries, tomatoes are going right now. So we're into the production season right now. I'm able to eat out of the gardens starting now through fall. But watering is critical. Here's what's happening right now. Your plants are used to the drip system that you've got going, or whatever your hand watering, whatever system you've got, however you're watering, irrigating your plants. Wherever that water goes, it is bone dry outside of that. There is no moisture in the ground at all. So the plants are super dependent on you. What will happen is if that plant gets dry, if you've only got one emitter that you started this plant out, let's say 3, 4, 5 years ago, and it was fine for that amount of time, but now it's grown up and it's become larger, the root mass has gone from here to out here. Sometimes, and this is when you'll find the weaknesses in your irrigation, you'll need to maintain, or it's kind of like, irrigation systems are kind of like an automobile. You need to make some maintenance to it, probably seasonally, or you need to actually expand or add to or amend your drip system. So if you had one emitter on a tree or a shrub back 5 years ago, that's probably not enough right now. What I'll do is I'll cut that off, I'll put a T in, I'll put 2. You put a real simple T on it. Now I've got 2 emitters. One of those spaghetti lines, the thin 1/4 inch line, you can have up to about 10 emitters on one of those lines, and then you start to run out of pressure. There's not enough water going through that line. So you can easily take off the ends of that and add 1 or 2 or maybe 3 or 4. It's a really large shade tree, very large tree. So if you're seeing stress, the leaves are looking burned at the tips, it's got holes or shriveling, or it looks some dry on the ends, those are all indications that you may need to do a tune-up on that irrigation system. If the plant is in for more than 2 years, you'll notice on the back of this it says established plants. We broke it down into 2 seasons, growing season and winter. We need to water year-round here. Obviously, we're at the peak of the season. April through October is our growing season. So there you're watering once a week established plants. Trees, shrubs, I would say all the plants we're talking about up here today, vines, grapes, about once a week is good. Deep soak. We don't water long enough. These micro irrigation systems, we just don't leave them on long enough. Things got to run for an hour straight to get 1 gallon of water on it. But a 15-gallon tree probably needs about 15 gallons a week to get enough water on that thing. So you might need to add 2 or 3 emitters around that tree to get enough water to run, or run it for 2 or 3 hours at a time to get enough moisture. What I find rookie, newbies to the area, especially Midwest folks, they really have a hard time. They're thinking water every day. Midwest and Northwest, hold on, let me see how many other people I can put down. Yeah, that's about it. Northwest folks think it's water, it rains every day, so therefore my plants need water every day. They don't need that. With our heavy mountain soils, you really want to push that water. So as you water, water gets heavier and heavier. It starts to push that water down. Hydraulics are a funny thing. It just pushes the water. You want to push that water through the root zone and then a little bit more. So you want to train your plants to go deep, not real shallow. If you're watering every day for 15, 20 minutes, which is a common thing I see, for a 1 gallon emitter run for 15 minutes, that's a quart of water. You gave a big tree that needs 15 gallons of water a day, or a week, you gave it a quart of water. You're gonna do it every day. Oh yay! You gave it 1.5 gallons of water. Super, that's good. You've got a plant that's gonna struggle. So it's very dependent on you. It'll be real shallow rooted, it'll sacrifice or dry up all the deeper roots and let them go. It's gonna go, well, that's what this is what I'm relying on. I'm gonna put all my roots up here where the drip irrigation is, and I'll just sacrifice and go up here. That is fine until you get into the monsoon seasons where we get these blustery wind patterns. This is when you'll start to see peach trees blow over. Butterfly bush will literally blow over in the wind. Fruit trees will they don't have enough roots. They'll load up with fruit and they fall over. It's because they're too shallow rooted. So you want to train these plants to be real deep rooted so they're more drought hardy and wind resistant. Does that make sense? So it's kind of common sense when you think it through, but that clock, the micro irrigation, it's a hard one to kind of put your brain around. But once a week, deep soak. New plants are different because the roots are this is a Rose of Sharon. It's starting to bloom right now all around town. This is a hibiscus. So you folks from California, Hawaii, The tropical Phoenix, Palm Springs, you know, you're famous for those tropical hibiscus. Those don't grow up here. This one is a hibiscus, and it actually is hardy enough. This goes down to minus 40 degrees. It'll take any amount of cold you give it. And it doesn't, the flower's not as large, but it makes up for it in sheer quantity. So this will have hundreds of flowers on it instead of just, 4 or 5 at a time. This will have dozens all at once. And you can count on it. Every year it will do this, every single year. It's amazing. Every yard should have at least one. It gets up about this tall, kind of pretty big size. It's a big shrub. Loves full sun. Hummingbirds and butterflies love it. It just has everything you want in a garden. This is a plant you treat like your trees. Once a week, good enough. But when it's small like this, especially if you're buying it, we sell most of them when they're in bloom, they're more sensitive. Anything in bloom, you need to be more accurate on the watering. But because the roots are only this big, you probably need to water this twice a week instead of once a week, so we can hydrate it. Once the roots push out in a year or two, a season or two, all of a sudden the roots aren't here, they're out here, and now the pressure's off on us to water so frequently. So you can back that off next year to once a week. So if you got a lot of new plants, what I'll do is I've got a lot of plants. I'll connect my new plants up to the drip irrigation system, but I don't modify the drip irrigation. I just keep it on that once a week watering. And then I'll supplement it by hand once a week. Every 10 days when I think about it, actually. So usually I'm out there, I'm a gardener. I'm out there pretty often. I go, oh, it looks like you need some more water. Makes me feel good because I'm caring for my little plants. And so it keeps them blooming. Okay? Anything that blooms or fruits, you need to watch that a little bit. You need to be careful with those so that you get that right. Any questions on watering? This is especially important, the winter piece, for container gardens and all these plants up here. You got fruit trees, anything that fruits, you'll need to supplement water in the winter. This is really hard for the Midwest folks again, because they're used to, they don't even water. They just basically, it gets cold, they get a frost line. In Wisconsin, 8-foot frost line. Why would you live there? Leave, come to Arizona in the winter. I mean, it's just free, everything turns into solid ice and they don't use water. We don't have a frost line here. I mean, code is 18 inches for your main and sewer and water lines. I mean, it's barely underneath the earth to keep it from freezing. We don't have a frost line. And so what happens is your plants are still using water through the winter. Not much, but they're using some. They didn't freeze, they're still active, the sap is still flowing, so you need to actually water those in winter to keep them healthy. This is important for edible, your fruit trees, grapes, berries, brambles, pomegranate, those kinds of figs. Really, really important. If you don't, we'll have what's called winter kill. And the plant will actually get burned back to the ground. If it gets bad enough, it'll burn right past the roots and the roots are killed. Some things are more sensitive. Pomegranates, figs, really sensitive. Berries a little bit. You can lose your canes. We'll go over that in a second. So just follow that direction. This is made to tape inside your irrigation box or your garden journal. As a reminder, you take my face, turn it around, post it in so you don't have to look at it, so you can see the water guide. So it's kind of small. You might need some cheaters to help you see that. Okay. Let's go over the berries and the grapes, that kind of stuff, okay? So I brought quite a selection here. We'll go over the plants and then we'll go over how to care for them because you need to fertilize right now. It's an important time to fertilize them. But we'll go over bugs, specific ones to these plants. That's kind of the rhythm we're going for. We'll do that all in 30 minutes or less. Okay, so Marionberries, Prime Arc. These are kind of my two favorites. They're both blackberries. I find my blackberries produce better. I literally have bowls and bowls and bowls of berries. It's ridiculous. It's too many. But I love berries. We'll go out with the grandkids and we'll eat berries until we're just faces are black. We eat so many grapes, we're sick by the time we come in. It is awesome. They think their grandfather is a genius. He's just a good gardener. Marionberry is basically just a named blackberry. It's a blackberry. You treat it just like a blackberry. What happens is certain regions of the country They grow blackberries better than anyone else in their heads, so they name them going, ours are better, so it's a Marionberry. It's just a blackberry from a certain part of the country. Treat them the same way. They are good berries, and they do produce exceptionally well up here. The reason I brought this one was, you can see the long cane coming out right now. So this is where, so with berries, your berry is produced on last year's wood. This is where a lot of mistakes are made. It's all about pruning. So this, I'm training right now to where I want it to grow for next year's garden. What will happen is next spring, this whole thing will load up with flowers, and that's where all the berries will be, obviously. So once this thing is done producing fruit, I want to cut this off, because it only does it once, and then it's done. Once and done. So I'm looking, it's all about strategizing how to prune. Here's a technique that works really, really well for me. If you go on the net and you read info, you'll get confused. They'll say, take a string and tie it on this so you can identify, oh yeah, this is I'm producing fruit on this one. I want to prune this one out in the winter, but then you'll forget which one was producing 6 months from now. So you just want to remember to say, identify it with a string or something. What I do, I actually tie bird tape onto my canes that are producing. It does two things for me. One, it keeps the birds off because they like them too. Second, I keep that bird tape on there until next winter when I'm pruning. I know, oh, that's the one that had the fruit. Cut that one right back to the ground. Then I'll encourage my new ones that didn't have fruit, and they'll replace those canes. I'm always rotating new canes coming up from the ground in that bramble patch. That's how you're going to maximize your fruit production. Does that make sense? So I've done string, I've done green tie tape, anything to identify which one, because your brain isn't going to help you. They all look the same in winter. You don't remember. You're printing these back, usually January, February, March. So I'm printing those things back. Anyway, yes. I cut them right back to the ground. Yep. I'm brutal. I want vigorous, new cane growth, because that's where all the fruit comes from. If you produce this year, you're out of my life. I only want new, vibrant canes. I go right back to the ground, right, just as close as I can, for me. If it's a sucker, maybe you can get in some weird techniques, but just go to the ground. They grow so fast here, it's good enough. Okay? They're coming out with a new series. Anytime you hear the word prime, this is Prime Arc Thornless Blackberry. They figured out a way. This is science. Prime Arc is one of the only blackberries that will actually produce on first-year wood and second-year wood. So it produces some berries this year. It'll produce most of the berries next year. I would still use the same technique on how to prune this, but if you're just not sure, pruning is kind of confusing, you made mistakes before, go with Prime. It's a great one that produces really well, and the berry is nice and big and sweet. It's a great one for here. Okay, for me, I've got a 6-foot cedar fence around the backyard. It's a half-acre lot. Cedar's great. It's better than cinder block. Cinder block's very sterile, very Russian, third world. Yes, look, we built it cheap. But it's ugly, it's sterile, it's hot. It just looks like cinder block. I don't care if you stucco it or not, but it needs to be softened with some plants. You need some living stuff in front of that. And so for me, I'll put plants, berries, grapes, about every 8 feet. I kind of switch it up, berries and grapes, raspberries, black. I don't go just one patch. I kind of spread it through so it adds some interest to my gardens. Again, these are mainly for me, they're a landscape plant first, and they're an edible plant second for my design, how I design. You might be a traditional, you like to line them up in the yard, make them look like they're marching through like soldiers, and that's an old school way to do it. That's good, there's nothing wrong with that. Especially with big properties like Chino Valley, Paulden, you guys have unlimited property out there, and wells. You water everything till you overwater things. But for me, I'm very much smaller footprint. So I'm trying to get 2 things out of my plants, not just one. So it's landscape plant first, then edibles. About 8-foot centers. seems to be about right. You can pack them in a little tighter if you wanted heavier production, but it's just me and maybe a grandkid or two that I'm not feeding the planet, just us. That seems to work out pretty well for us. Okay. I do have trellises up against the fence because these things don't attach themselves. So I just put up whatever trellis we're kind of weave them in. It seems to work. If I don't have a trellis, I'll take the cedar fence. I'll just kind of poke the cane through the slats, and that works too. Just keep them up out of the way because they'll tend to want to catch you while you go walk by them. They get these long arches. They've grown already 10 feet or more, and they're still going. They've probably got another 5-6 feet to go. So they're going to go from me to you as far as canes. That's what you want, because that entire cane is going to be loaded with fruit next year. Okay? Raspberries the same way. Okay? Let's talk about grapes. Grapes are right in there in the same way. So I brought two. The most popular grape by far is Thompson Seedless. It's an edible green grape. They grow exceptionally well here. They're starting to produce little clusters of fruit. I don't think I brought one with clusters on it yet. But they're starting to form little clusters of fruit. They haven't matured yet. What you'll find, you folks from the Napa, northern kind of grape country, where they grow wild, they won't be quite as large here, I find. They're a little bit smaller, but they're sweeter. Or they just, like all that sugar is condensed. They like melt in your mouth. My mouth's melt. It's just, I want some grapes now. Oh my gosh. Probably another month I'll be picking grapes. Okay. This one, pruning. We should cover pruning again. Usually this is a winter topic, but really you want to train this thing up to grow about 4 feet, 5 feet chest high or so. Then you train it to go up and down the wire, the fence, whatever you happen to got. I take a different approach to it. Again, my plants are landscape plants first, then they're edibles. So if you read all the stuff online, you're going to hear all this commercial production stuff. But we're not commercial growers. I think we can have our cake and eat it too. We're not after maximum extra. I need another bushel per acre for maximum production. I think we can have beauty. We can sacrifice some of that for beauty. So for me, I've got a 6-foot cedar fence. I'm growing them up to 6 foot. What I'll do is I'll have 2 T's coming off that 6-foot fence. So I'll grow it to the top, and then I go, okay, stop growing up, start growing out. So I'm trying to soften up all that hardware, basically, all that fence line, trying to make it look gardenesque, a private garden, and it does. But then I've got all this gap, so I kind of want some more foliage down there. So I just go halfway, 3 or 4 feet, tee it off there. So I always prune it back. Everything gets pruned off every March, January through March, somewhere in there. I'll prune everything off except for the main trunk and that couple double T. It's pretty. It produces grapes like crazy. And so I think you can have both. So sometimes you get confused, read all these technical manuals, and it does actually increase production if you do it that way. But we're not growing, 10 acres of Zinfandel for wine production. We just want table grapes to eat with the grandkids, for me. Or just to eat while I'm out there in the gardens. So that's one that works. Grapes do not need pollinators. One grape and you're good. Okay? So you can have reds, greens, that kind of stuff. I brought this one as an example. This is one that I would buy myself if I were planting. And what I'm looking for is a tall vine that I can plant deeper. Grapes are one of the very few plants that you can plant. The deeper you plant it, the better it roots. So I would buy this one. I'd pull these bamboo canes off, and I would plant it right there where that graft is. I planted that deep in the ground. And I would just start watering it. And grapes will actually start rooting up and down that vine. So don't do that with berries. If you do that with a blackberry, it is dead to the plant. If you get any amount of soil on this cane, it's going to die. It'll root rot, crown rot. It just rots. So this top soil needs to be exposed. It's really important for berries. Grapes, though, the game's changed. And so I'm looking for a deeper, stronger, deeper vine. I'll put this up on the drip system like I do a tree or a shrub because they're so deep rooted, and that's how I'll water it. I'll fertilize. We'll cover fertilizer in a second, but that's how I'll plant that. We do grow quite a few. This is a Zinfandel. No, Zestful. Oh, even better. This is a dwarfed grape that grows table grapes. So grapes get monstrous. So they'll grow from me to you in the back. The vines are already at 8-10 feet. And they'll grow twice that by the time we're all done. They're magnificent. They're pretty. I've grown them up a 2-story pergola over top of my deck that was a story up, and then had grapes over top of lattice work. The grapes would come down. That's what you can do with grapes. They're amazing. They just take some maintenance to prune them back and stuff. This one you can grow in a pot, and it only gets this big. It doesn't get these long tendrils. It's more bush-like instead of a vine. Okay, so Zestful. New series coming out. Questions on grapes? You can grow Cabernets, Zinfandels. You can grow any kind of grapes you want. This is good grape country. It's surprising how well grapes do here. Okay. Yeah?
I planted a flame about 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And the canes are growing like crazy, but I can see any evidence of an improvement at all.
So she's got a flame grape, which is a pretty red grape. She planted it 3 months ago, so get that right? It's growing like crazy, but no fruit yet. It may be one of two things. Typically, plants don't produce very much the first year because they're either fruiting or they're rooting, but they don't do both. They're putting all those carbohydrates either in the root structure or in the fruits. But when you kind of want it to produce, that's encouraging to me, putting on a lot of foliage, not a lot of fruit. It's got a lot of sugar. It can create a lot of photosynthesis. And now it's creating all this root structure. So all that growth you see up top, it's also doing underneath the ground at the same time. So that's highly encouraging. If you do get some fruit, it won't be very much. It'll be a few clusters, and they'll probably be smaller than normal. But you're setting the stage for next year. Blueberries do exceptionally well here, with a caveat. You folks from Minnesota, Michigan, blueberry country. There they grow wild. They're almost a weed. Not so here. Blueberries grow well, but they don't like alkaline water. That's the main thing, the alkalinity. We tend to creep up too high, and so it's hard to keep them in color. It's hard to keep the fruits large enough and really deep blue. So I don't really encourage folks to plant these in the ground themselves. I like to see these planted in raised beds or containers, so I can control the soil. I'll plant this in some heavy potting soil mix. The main ingredient in potting soil is peat moss. That's a very acidic type of soil, and it drains really well. So these guys will suffer that weight buildup in the tub or the sink or that calcium mineral layer. These guys do not like that. So that builds up in your soil, and it affects it in this top growth. It'll sort of go off color. And so if I put that in potting soil, so I'll use a container about this big, 18, 20 inches or so, that about that tall, really pretty glazed pot or something. And I'll plant it in that. It'll grow for years in that pot, but I'll plant it in straight potting soil. And that seems to make the difference with production, berries, size. They don't get as big here. They're probably 20, 30% smaller than what you might be used to if you've grown them in other parts of the country. But they produce berries that melt in your mouth, literally melt in your mouth. I mean, you won't go back to store-bought blueberries. They'll be pithy and off-color, but fresh off the bush. Oh, they're like candy. Oh my gosh. Is it lunchtime or what? Anyway, that's the secret to blueberries. I do have a handout. I wrote a handout on blueberries. Now, I thought this was a really specialized, usually the more specialized you get with a class, the less students you have. So this isn't, not everyone cares about berries or grapes. They just don't care. They're messy, but I have 10 of these. I'll pass some this way, some that way. If that's of interest, take one. If we run out, I was going to send 2 things to students today. One was this handout. The other one was I wrote a book on fruiting plants for here. It's got hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of downloads. In fact, I think it had like 900 downloads last time I looked. It's a free download. I'll give it to you for free. It's a PDF, so you got to download it and then read it on your iPad or your screen, whatever screen you happen to have, or you can hit the print button. But it's like 50, 60 pages. So if that's of interest, I'll email the link to this to you. If I run out in the back, you can have it by the end of the day, and then I'll give the book to everyone. So if that's of interest, put your email there. How do I do that with COVID all of a sudden? Touch the clipboard if you want. I should send sanitizer out with it. But anyway, do that as you can. Anymore, you got to rethink everything you do anymore in today's world. Okay, let's go over figs, because figs and pomegranates, they grow up here. They're kind of specialized, and they don't grow like you think they will at this altitude. It's an altitude thing. So I brought this one. This is probably one of the hardiest of all the figs, Chicago hardy. We do grow Mission, Black Turkey, Kubota, some of the other figs as well. You won't find any fig trees here. They just get burned back, they get reset in the winter, so they act more like a perennial than they do like a tree, like a herbaceous perennial. They'll be more like burned back to the ground and come back. So you'll see big bushes. They'll be as tall as you and I, and they're loaded with figs. Figs like bright sun, hot. I mean, plant it, surround it with rock. Put asphalt around it. Take a blow dryer to it. It likes that. Okay, that's the kind of where it grows. Mine seems to come back probably every other year. It burns back to the ground, and so this whole stem will die. And so brand new bushes, brand new stems will be coming up from the ground. So it grows, and I like multi-stems as best I can. Full sun. If you get the wrong variety, or if you don't water this in the winter, it's going to die. So this is one that's really critical to hydrate it in the winter. If it gets dry, and then we get this cold cycle that hits, it's all of a sudden it's 19 degrees, you can actually kill off not just the branching, but it can damage the root as well. Another caveat with this is because it likes to heat so much, it has zero interest in spring. And so a lot of folks get tricked in thinking it died on them. In fact, I had a customer this spring, dug it up, brought it back. I want a refund on this. It died. I'm going, take that home. This hasn't woken up yet. Be patient. Come on, put it back in the ground. No, I'm not refunding anything for you. These guys wait to wake up until like Memorial Day. I mean, it is late. It's May before they even start to think about coming out because they don't like cold nights. Grapes can be that way. Grapes, you'd think they were dead, and all of a sudden, just after Mother's Day, they start to emerge, start to grow. And when they do, they just take off. But they like warm soil. They need the soil to be warm, not just the day to be warm. So that's one that produces really heavy. It does produce heavily figs. I mean, just melt in your mouth figs. Okay. Chicago Hardy is kind of my favorite, and then it's just a little tougher, a little more robust than some of the turkeys and the figs, some of the other mission figs, that kind of stuff. They go hand in hand with pomegranates, and I thought I had a pomegranate up here. Here we go. Again, they don't grow, pomegranates in Tucson. Just go together. Beautiful bushes, big, tons of fruits. They don't grow quite as large here because of the cold. They come out, they leaf out a little bit later, but they do, if you get the right varieties. We're carrying the varieties that are hardier, that produce more consistently up here. This will actually form a pomegranate like this, usually late summer, fall. The flowers on pomegranates, you ever seen a flower on a pomegranate? Super bright red. I mean, it's just pretty, it's a pretty bush by itself. You've never seen one actually in bloom. But then when the fruit comes on, it's like ornaments all over the plant. It'll produce several dozen, and maybe several dozen. A dozen or so fruits on it. So pomegranates do well. Again, plant it with the fig. It likes hot, sun, heat. Put it on the south-facing wall. Have that heat reflect off of it. It's going to like that kind of, where other things might struggle, this thing will produce really, really well. Okay. Again, it grows like a bush, not like a tree. So it's going to be kind of a bush like this, not tree form. Yeah.
Why do flowers fall?
What's that?
Why do my flowers fall?
Why do your pomegranate flowers fall off? Well, I don't know. But more than likely, it's going to be probably a water issue, or it could actually be this spring. We had a bug out when it was in bloom called thrip, T-H-R-I-P. Thrips I've never seen them so bad. They were exceptionally bad this spring because remember spring, it's hard to think back since March, everything's like a blur in my world, but basically remember it's a really long, cool spring, right through middle of May, which is really cool. And so that's the perfect storm for thrip and aphids. They get inside the flower, they'll scrape the inside of the flower off, and then it just goes, there's no tissue left, it'll drop right off. My guess is that. Yeah. Let's cover, am I right? Am I ready for food yet? Let's cover food since you brought it up. So systemics I would not give. You can give it a systemic. It would solve thrip. But I have a practice. I just don't put anything systemic on my edible stuff. I mainly focus on, systemics are, you give it a bug killer at the roots. The plant will actually absorb that through the root structure, take it up through the cambium layer, then taint the flowers and the foliage so the bugs get eaten from the inside out. The problem is it can sometimes get into the fruit. So we do have a systemic. We make it for here. It's called Plant Protectors, one we put together for up here. Mainly I put that together because pinyon pine scale and bark beetle are so bad that they kill off our pine trees. In fact, entire neighborhoods have been slaughtered by this bug. So I created that for those plants. Sorry, folks. See, that's a benefit. You don't hear all that as much when you're here in person instead of online. But thanks for tuning in. Just recognizing people online, right? You got to do that. Okay, so we know you're there, really. What I do with my plants, in fact, I fertilized everything in the yard last weekend, setting the stage for the monsoon season. So we're coming into actually a second growing season. So spring is the most popular time because everyone's been pent up. I mean, let's face it, by the end of March, we're tired of being indoors, eating cookies and sipping tea and waiting for spring to hit. We just want to be outside, especially gardeners. And so there's this huge push at the garden center of all the gardeners are coming in. I find that I have more success planting now, right before the monsoon seasons hit, because in spring the ground is really cold. I mean, it's almost ice cold. So you plant something and it doesn't grow, it just sits there. You think it's doing something, but it's really, because of cold, the ground is so cold that it struggles some. You plant something now and it just takes off, just like that. I mean, it starts rooting, now. And so you get a much stronger, faster uptake or root growth by planting now. You'll just have to watch your watering more carefully because the ground is dry right now. So you're not thinking of watering the plant, you're thinking watering the ground around the plant. You change the way you're thinking how you irrigate plants, your success rate will actually go up right now. It's a unique thing to the mountains because of our wet cycle. We're going to have, I think in June, what was it? It's like a 1/4 inch of rain on average, 100-year average. We've had a 1/4 inch of rain. July and August, it's like 2.5 inches of rain. It's like 5 times as much moisture. 100-year average. Everyone goes, oh, rain's not coming. Trust me, rain is coming. I don't know how much. Moisture's coming. It always does. We just don't know how much. Well, all of a sudden that takes the pressure off that moisture. You got warm soil plus moist soil. That's a good combo for things that are edible. There's Vincent. Hey, Vinny. What you doing, big man? Just greeting everyone. This is Vincent. He's 10 years old. Hey, big man. He knows who all the dog people are. He's smelling for treats right now to see which one he can beg off of you all. Yeah. Anyway, Vincent was the very first guide dog for the blind. So my daughter raised him back 10 years ago. So he's the puppy that seeded the local club. He made it through the system, went to San Rafael, which is where all the West Coast guide dogs will blind are trained, so he knows how to go on buses, go up elevators, all the stuff. But then he had an issue, he got kicked out at the last moment. Actually what it was, he's just so lazy. Literally, he's so laid back, they couldn't find a blind person that was that laid back. And so they kicked him out. And if you raise him, he spends like 2 years with you. So he went to church with us, all restaurants, everywhere we went, he went, everywhere. So he's very socialized. They said, hey, you want him back? We said, we would love to have him back. And so we changed out his patch on his vest. Now instead of, therapy dog, it says therapy dog, please pet me. Yeah. So we just think, he just goes, yep, he found the treats, there we go. Anyway, he just goes, he free roams and says hi, that's what he does. So if you folks online want to get out of the house, you tired of quarantining, come in and don't talk to me, I'll have my mask on after this. You can pet the dog all day long though. Okay, so we were on food. What I'll do with food, I'm fertilizing my edible things. This is really important for edible things. 3 times a year minimum, sometimes 4 for my big things. I'm fertilizing spring, summer right now, and fall is the most important feeding of all of them. So if you're thinking in terms of holidays, think Easter, 4th of July, Halloween. Those are good markers for when to treat your edible plants. Actually, everything in the yard I've done. In fact, maybe since we got time, I might explain a bit more. I put down the fruit tree food, organic food for things that you eat. Vegetables, grapes, berries, fruit trees. And actually, if I got some left over, I'll throw anything that blooms, so lilacs, forsythias, roses, Sharons, that kind of stuff. Those are heavier feeders. This is a recipe I put together specifically for our plants. And then you'll see it's 6447. The 7 is calcium. We have a real lack of calcium here. So calcium is what brings out the flavor, the color, the fragrance. It's also what keeps blossom end rot from happening on your tomatoes, peppers, keeps squash from pollinating. That's all a calcium issue. Well, I know that about our plants because I know our water and our soil. So I said, I want a food that's got the nitrogen, phosphorus, potash, and I've just front-loaded it with a crazy amount of calcium. So it's pelletized, organic, you can spread it out there. As water hits it, releases over about a 3-month period of time. Everything else I did in the yard, my evergreens, shade trees, everything else, my perennial gardens, I did with all-purpose plant food. This is 744, just 3 numbers, not 4. I didn't put a lot of calcium, I didn't put a lot of sulfur and iron in this. So if your plants are turning yellow, you just have this yellow tinge, they're kind of off color, they look kind of anemic. Well, that's usually a pH issue. The pH crept up too high because our water is very high in pH. So I know we're all have the same water. I don't care if you're in Chino, Prescott Valley, we're all the same, we all have the same water. I put a lot of sulfur, which brings the pH down, and a lot of iron to green things back up. So I've done this. It's also pelletized. You spread it around. And I would do that before the rains come. Do it. It's like really urgent. Do the entire landscape now so that you can take advantage of this growing season to come. You can get a whole other set of growth on your shade trees. So if you got a real young type of landscape, newer home, if you want to get that thing to mature faster, give it some of this. If in doubt, give it this. If it's edible, give it the fruit tree, vegetable fruit tree food. Does that make sense? A caveat to that, if you've got things that are stressed out, we got quite a few folks that came in. Brown, obviously the plant is stressed. It's wind torn, it's got leaf spots. You can just see it's not performing, it's not happy. If you've got plants like that, I also put this on at the same time. I'll put humic on my stressed out plants or brand new plants or lawns. That's kind of where I put this. Humic is humic acid. If you're organic gardeners, you know humic acid. If you take a compost pile, and stay up there. If you take a compost pile, you boil it down to its last element, that's humic acid. Humic acid feeds the dirt, feeds the soil, does not feed the plant. So it feeds the soil some more worms, mycorrhizal colonies, the things that benefit plants. It enlivens the soil around that plant. Plants go, whoa, something's going on, this is exciting. I should root more, so it encourages more roots. It's literally what it does. And so if you've got a stressed out plant, you really need more roots underneath that thing. That's what you put on it. Okay, and that's kind of where you're at. While I was at that, you're going to have weeds like crazy. I didn't mean for this to be part of the class, but while we're on this subject, I'm talking to friends. I did put weed and grass stopper down. So Weed Beater Ultra is down there, it's in a bag. While I got my hand spreader out, I just spread it out around the yard so that I don't have weeds, because your tumbleweeds are about to take off. Goat head, the one that's real pretty, goes across the ground, then you lift it up, it says like hundreds of these little seed pods with thorns on it. Those are all summer plants. They only come back by seed. If you can keep that seed from germinating, you won't have weeds, or you'll be greatly reduced. So just know when the rains come, the weeds come with it. And so just know, be on the leading edge of that, and you won't have as much, you won't have to work as hard for a nice yard. Literally, I hate weeding. So I took a couple bags, one in the front, one in the back, spread it around where I tend to have weeds, and I won't have weeds. So Weed Beater Ultra is down some green bag or something down below. I think a bag covers 5,000 square feet. But do that at the same time. Which one goes first? Whichever bag comes out of the trunk first. It doesn't matter at all. Just get the food on, get the weed and grass stopper on, get the humic on, stressed out things. I did all that last week. And then I prayed for rain, and it didn't rain. So my prayers aren't as good as some others. If you could, pray for rain, that'd be good. It'll help my yard. Okay, let's see, edible. I think I'm just about there. What I did bring, just for fun, were a couple plants that maybe you haven't seen before. They don't show up in spring, you only see them now. Crepe myrtles are one of those. So crepe myrtles, they're starting to bloom around town. In Prescott Valley, they're already starting to go. In Prescott, not quite yet. Depends on where you're at, how much sun, how hot that area is, but it's another shrub, it looks like this. This plant, again, is like a fig or like a pomegranate. This guy loves heat, guy, whatever this thing is. This shrub loves the hot. It's one of the few things that blooms this time through fall. Your lilacs, they're done. Forsythias, they're done. Quince, they're done. They're just green shrubs now. So really there's kind of this lull in the summer gardens of really handsome, pretty, showy, fragrant shrubs. This is one that fills that gap. Crepe myrtles, for you folks from the south, they do not grow into trees here. You will never see a tree with crepe myrtle, because they're very much like this fig. Remember I said figs burn back to the ground? When you reset them to the ground, they act more like a perennial. This one does the same thing. So every 3 or 4 years, it'll set back to the ground, it comes back fresh. Or you'll see these beautiful bushes. They'll be up about head high or so, but you don't really see a tree so much. But it does this. Very few shrubs have this kind of color, that vibrant, fluorescent, the brightness to it. I grow that one, and then this is one of my favorites, just because I love this foliage. This is a new variety. It's got purple foliage, and then bright white, red, and pink flowers. Not different, depending on what color, not on the same bush, but what color you plant. I just love the foliage. You don't see this kind of purple, glossy, waxy, leafy kind of plants. So anyway, this one's got a bright pink. This is called Coral Magic. Bright pink flower on this purple foliage, super unusual. Again, put it out in the sun, where it's just surrounded by rock. Take the exhaust to the truck and just blow it on there. It's gonna love heat. All more heat, the better. Just some of that hotter spots where other things don't grow, this one will grow. Yeah.
Well, I have some of those in my yard, and they're gorgeous, and they lose their leaves. But do you cut them back?
I don't cut, yeah, good question. So she said, how do I treat it in the winter? So it's deciduous, so it loses its foliage. It won't really leaf out until May. So it's not interested in spring. It likes the heat. It's all soil temperature related. Once it's hot enough, mine's been leafing out, starting to bud out, pretty nice right now. In the winter, I don't do much with it. I keep it it's kind of a slow grower, I give it a haircut and I'll shape it, but I don't really trim it very much. It does put little seed pods on after it gets done blooming. They're quite pretty. I think they're ornamental. I'll keep those on in winter, but come January, February, I'll kind of take then I've got gloves, I'm just raking that up there, going, thump, you're off. I just have this real pretty stemmed shrub. I'll fertilize it with the all-purpose plant food. This is what I'll use for that, the smaller bag. This comes in a big bag too, just it's hard to carry on 20-pound bags and show them off. Can you see that? Just for you folks online. Okay, all-purpose. This seems to bring out that flower color. This is cottonseed meal is the main ingredient in this. It's organic again. I actually can't call it organic, I can call it natural. Once you put a mineral in it, like sulfur and iron, it's no longer technically organic, but it's all natural. But that cottonseed meal brings out the color, the fragrance of flowers, so you get brighter flowers to it. So it's really good stuff. All right, so that's crepe myrtle. That was a quick lesson on crepe myrtles. This is a new butterfly bush. Your grandparents grew black knight or dark knight. It's a monstrous butterfly bush. I mean, small dogs, children have been lost in butterfly bush because they grow so fast, so big, so they just grow big. This is a dwarf. Echinaceas is a perennial flower. It's a summer flower. This one actually is a wildflower. You'll actually see come up in other parts of the yard. I love planting this. It gets up about 2 feet tall or so, kind of vase-shaped to it. Has these big flowers. It's just starting to bloom, so that flower will turn into that. This one I plant for my birds. And here's how I treat this one. So this one benefits from deadheading. So after this flower blooms, it'll bloom for a week or two. Then it will start to fade. I don't let it go to seed. I'll take it, pinch that off, prune it off. So it is forced to form another flower. So this one's got 3 or 4 more flowers already coming up. So it'll pulsate waves of flowers coming up. And it will keep doing that until you let it go to seed. Once you let it go to seed, it stops blooming, going, okay, all I wanted to do is reproduce seed. So it puts all of its energy into the seed. As long as you keep nipping that off, it'll keep going, oh no, I need to set another flower so I get more seed. I need to set more flowers so I set more seed. I'll do that until about October, and then I will let all my gaillardias, echinaceas, coreopsis, all my seed-producing flowers, I'll let them all go to seed at that point for 2 reasons. One, I love wildflowers, they got to reseed, and then my birds, my winter birds, that's one of their main food sources come winter. So I purposely am planning for my birds out there. Does that make sense? So echinaceas comes in a lot of different colors. A couple others and we'll wrap this thing up. We're right at 1 hour. Perfect. So I've got some unusual plants you're probably not familiar with. We'll just see. Well, you're probably familiar with this one. Anyone know? Red Hot Poker. Now, usually the old-fashioned Red Hot Poker stands about this tall. It's been in bloom. In fact, it's done blooming. There, when it's done blooming, you take this stalk and just prune it back and just enjoy the foliage. Okay, it's pretty. It's pretty. It has a grass look. This is a new variety. It's popsicle varieties. This is a series. It's a dwarf variety. So it has the brighter colors. So it's more pure reds, yellows. There's several colors down there, but it only gets this tall. Way easier to maintain. But it still has the same javelina resistant, deer resistant. Animals don't eat it. It's drought hardy, and it just blooms like this over and over. Hummingbirds, I find, loves this flower too. So popsicle series. You've seen it before, but you haven't seen the dwarfed variety. Okay. This one is St. John's wort. Terrible name. They don't have any better name. It's a summer plant. You don't see this plant in the spring. You only see this plant in the summer at the garden centers because it loves summer. It's got a very thick, leathery leaf to it. It's got this pretty flower, yellow flower, and then it's got these gorgeous berries. Not edible, that I know of. I don't think it's edible. I wouldn't eat it if I were you. But I'd volunteer to give someone a berry if they want to try it. We need a test victim. Anyway, it just does this, and it loves the heat. It's a perennial, comes back every year. Some places in the yard are just hard to grow things. This is one that will take that. Gets about knee high, kind of mounds like this. It's just a pretty unusual plant, St. John's wort. Okay. I don't know why they put wort in the name so many times of plants, but it's pretty common. This is an elderberry. It actually does produce fruit, elderberry pie, elderberry jam, elderberries. I don't plant it for that. It does put a little berry on. I leave it for the birds, but it just has pretty foliage. Very few plants would take it. Takes the clay soil, gets up pretty good sized. I tend to give it a haircut pretty strong in the winter, but just has this pretty lacy in the perennial gardens towards the backside. With this guy right here, those just look good together. So this is Hibiscus, Rose of Sharon, Elderberries. This is called Black Lace Elderberry. You got a couple different varieties. Just something you see in the summer. Yes, it produces fruit, but it's just pretty. Sometimes you just need something pretty in the gardens. With that, I'll leave it for a couple questions, and then I think we're done. You guys have been very patient. What do we got? Yeah. Yeah. Deer do not eat this. Nope, they leave it alone. And I am pretty sure they don't eat this, because I've got one right next. I've got javelina and rabbit heavily, and deer will come across every once in a while in this area, and I haven't had them eat anything. So I think we're okay. Great myrtles are pretty good that way. They don't eat that. Yeah, you should be good to go. All animal. I never say proof, because there's always one herd that didn't read the list. Yeah. But animal resistant, pretty much you'll see them in your neighborhoods where they don't bother. Even strong, heavy influence of the animals, they don't bother. Yeah, good question. Anything over here? Oh, that's too easy, yeah.
I watched the video last night. The lady, I don't think she works here anymore, but she used to plant the flowers. Anyway, about that revitalize. And, you know, like when the monsoons come and you get the mold or whatever on roses.
Good. Okay, so good question. We are coming into disease season. We're trying to stock up enough product now because we know what's going to happen. When the rains come, we get leaf spot, leaf curl, powdery mildew, a white coating on the foliage because it's so humid. And so if your plants, this is a secret for watering here, do not water at night. Make sure your plants are dry going into the evening. Otherwise, you're doomed. And I'll sell you a whole bunch of this. I do have to make another kid's grad payment, so I got college to pay for. But to your friends, water in the morning before the heat of the day. I'd say 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. You will hydrate before the heat. And then I wouldn't water after about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Even if your tomatoes are wilty, they're going, "I'm so hot." I mean, tomatoes are crybabies. They want to express how any kind of emotion they got it. And they're going off the deep end. As soon as the sun goes down, they're going, "Oh no, I'm fine." Okay, boom, and they pop right back up. Let them stress out at the end of the day, because you don't want a tomato being wet in the evening, because you'll get leaf curl, wilt. What this is an organic. If you do happen to have an issue, so powdery mildew on my squash, it happens every year. There's nothing I can do about it. It's just, I know it's coming. I'll go ahead and spritz this starting, as soon as I see the first rain, I'll start hitting this every couple of weeks, just as a preventative, because I know I'm going to get mildew on my pumpkins, my squash, zucchinis, that kind of stuff. I know certain roses, my blue roses, they just get mildew, powdery mildew. So I'll spritz those with this. If you know you've got a problem, spritz it with this as a preventative. Works great. If you can get it on the leading edge, you start to see spotting, leafing, curling, white colors. Spray it with Revitalize, and it's safe for your birds, safe for your pets. You got that new puppy dog that loves eating everything. You could spray this. They can go out. I don't encourage that, but it's less risky with organics than you are with chemicals. So Revitalize is your ticket for that. Good stuff, very good stuff. I'm using right now multi-purpose insect spray. This is a bug killer we put together for our local bugs. So I'm noticing spider mites. This is what I use. Aphids on some pine trees. This is what I'm using. It will kill tomato worms, that great big green worm in your tomatoes. I generally like the BT better, the Thuricide, this stuff, just because I know this is as safe as you can get. So, and it's my edible gardens. So, but if I'm in doubt from having a party like we had our backyard barbecue last weekend, family's coming over, we got the grill going. Margarita machine's out. Iced tea is brewed and on ice. It's like it was magic. It was great to have family together. Before that happened, I took a hose and sprayer and I hosed down the entire yard. So I don't have mosquitoes or flies. Because those are two things that will destroy any party in a backyard. It's not fun. The mosquitoes are out or the flies are out. So I just hit the areas and it kills them. And then I'm looking for webbing on plants. Watch for, there's one other thing came up. It's a little bit early, but you'll start to see your grapes. If you've got grapes, you'll see some of the foliage missing. There's a little caterpillar called grape leaf skeletonizer. It's notorious here. It's a real pretty caterpillar. It's got black and yellow stripes on it. But they'll come in colonies. They'll just strip all the foliage and just leave the veins left. If you see that, you won't see the caterpillar. But I think Ken mentioned that. I think I remember seeing, grape leaf skeletonizer. Just come down and get again, it's a caterpillar. So you get the Thuricide, spray it. You can spray the grapes, but you mainly focus on the foliage. They'll come out, eat this. They get sick to their stomach, drop dead in about 2 days from starvation, and all your problems are gone. Yes? You could use this on honeysuckle, but honeysuckles don't really get bugs, yes, but not so much caterpillars. I would think for honeysuckle specifically, if I were advising you one-on-one, I would probably get you this one. Because they get more spider mites, drip, and aphids than they do caterpillars. So, and if in doubt, take a limb, take a stem, take a leaf, get a piece, put it in a Ziploc baggie, please. Don't bring it out, infect all my plants out of your trunk. We want to isolate it. Bring it in, we've got a microscope, and we can blow it up, and we can see what it is. We can actually go, oh, look at that thing. We can take a spider mite, blow it up to this big, and a huge screen TV, and it's frightening sometimes. See all 8 eyes and tentacles looking at you.
They have a lot of caliche.
Yep.
So some of my plants aren't really well. It's always waste.
Yes.
So what do you suggest?
So she's got a lot of caliche. You just described all of us. So especially that 69 corridor, it's notorious. Prescott Lakes, notorious for caliche layers. So caliche is a hard calcium layer in the soil. It's like this band of chalky looking stuff. We have jackhammers on the truck for that to try to break through it. But you tend to overwater things. So if you see that card that I gave you, the water guide, if you didn't get one, I'll attach that to Blueberries, the fruit tree book, and how to plant. I'll send that to you. Basically, you might modify it water instead of once a week, maybe every 10 days. So watch. That's where I can't tell you exactly how to water your gardens. It's going to vary some. The front yard will be a little different than the backyard. And so, but you need to put your garden hat on and kind of modify and talk to plants. And that's what gardening is kind of figure it out. And so there I'd say water a little less, but when you do, water deep, and then let it go for a while. So, yeah. Caliche is a hard one. Never plant at soil level, always plant a little high. That'll help you get some of that roots out of that caliche. That's a little trick that I learned years ago. This is not about planting. This class is not about planting. It's about the plants. And I have a whole class, we go an hour just on how to install and put plants in the ground. Okay. With that, I'll take one last question. If you need more resources, watersgardencenter.com. You know where to look, you folks online, but you all here too. If you pull up the website, there's a Learn button on the top banner. Just hit the Learn, and all the handouts, every time we teach a class, we create a handout. We want something for you to take home, hopefully with our logo on it. But basically, it's got good information. They're all right there. So blueberries, blackberries, top 10 list, how to plant. Look at that, it's made to be a helpful resource for you because there really isn't really good information for the high elevations of Arizona. It's all for the deserts or it's all for the East Coast. We're kind of left wanting up here. It's a little bit different here. It's meant to be a good resource. Also, you get the podcast. Every week I put together a podcast. It's pretty entertaining, I think. We do our YouTube videos. We got a YouTube channel, over 1 million downloads already and growing. So that button's right there. So there's a lot of resources for you. So take advantage of it. With that, I'll take one last question because she had her hand up and she's been so patient. Go for it.
What is the best tasting grape? Is it green or red or?
Best tasting grape. It's opinion. But as a man, I like to thank you for asking my opinion. Yes, here we go. I love Thompson. I like Flame. Those are my two favorites as far as green, and they're most popular. So they must have something going for them, and they're consistent fruiters. So it's not just about taste, it's about do they produce well here. And so Flame for the red, Thompson for the green. That's my opinion. And I think they produce, and I've grown both. I grow both. They do great, really good. With that, I'll let you clap. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for tuning in to you folks online.